The heavy iron gates of St. Jude's Cathedral do not merely creak. They groan with the weight of secrets that have been suppressed for over a century. Imagine a structure so imposing that its shadow seems to swallow the very sunlight of the small town of Oakhaven, a place where the history is as thick as the morning mist. For years, the townspeople walked past the weathered stone walls, never suspecting that the true foundation of their faith was built upon something far more unsettling than mortar and brick. We are about to embark on a journey into the heart of a mystery that lay dormant for generations, a cold case that defied logic and challenged the very nature of truth. Before we descend into the damp, dark corridors of the past, please consider subscribing to our channel and turning on notifications so you never miss a deep dive into the world's most chilling investigations. The story begins in the summer of 1892, a year of record-breaking heat and unusual social tension in Oakhaven. At the center of this tension was Father Thomas Thorne, a man whose piety was only matched by his intense desire for privacy. Thorne had overseen the construction of the cathedral's lower sanctum, a project that took nearly a decade and exhausted the local parish's funds. When the doors to the basement were finally sealed, Thorne claimed it was to protect sacred relics. However, the whispers in the town square suggested a different motive. People spoke of late-night deliveries, of heavy crates arriving under the cover of darkness, and of the father's sudden, unexplained wealth. When Thorne vanished in the winter of 1895, the mystery of the basement vanished with him, buried under layers of bureaucracy and the silence of the church. For over 100 years, the lower sanctum remained a forbidden zone. It wasn't until a series of structural tremors in the early 2000s threatened the integrity of the main altar that the local historical society, led by lead investigator Elias Vance, was granted permission to enter. Vance was a man of facts, a seasoned researcher who believed that every ghost story had a rational explanation rooted in human greed or tragedy. He arrived at St. Jude's with a team of structural engineers and a healthy dose of skepticism. What they found, however, would force Vance to reconsider everything he thought he knew about the history of Oakhaven. As the team breached the heavy oak doors leading to the sub-basement, they were met with a scent that Vance later described as ancient ozone, a sharp metallic smell that shouldn't have existed in a stagnant cellar. The air was unnaturally cold, even for a stone chamber deep underground. Their flashlights cut through the darkness, revealing a space that was far more sophisticated than a simple storage room. The walls were lined with intricate carvings that didn't match the Gothic architecture of the cathedral above. Instead, they depicted celestial maps and anatomical sketches that seemed centuries ahead of their time. The first major discovery came when the team reached the central chamber. There, beneath a heavy slab of black granite, they found a series of journals belonging to Father Thorne. These weren't the diaries of a holy man. They were the meticulous logs of an investigator. Thorne had been tracking a series of disappearances that had plagued the region long before the church was built. He believed that the ground itself held a magnetic anomaly, a thin place where the laws of physics behaved differently. The journals detailed his attempts to map these anomalies using primitive but ingenious instruments. Vance began to piece together a timeline. Between 1888 and 1894, 12 people had gone missing in the Oakhaven Valley. The official records at the time attributed these losses to the harsh wilderness or simple accidents. But Thorne's journals suggested a pattern. The victims were all connected to a specific geological vein that ran directly beneath the site of the cathedral. Thorne hadn't built the basement to hide relics. He had built it as a laboratory to study a phenomenon he couldn't name. He was a man caught between his faith and a scientific curiosity that bordered on obsession. The investigation took a darker turn when the engineers discovered a hidden crawl space behind the celestial carvings. Inside, they found a collection of personal items: a child's leather shoe, a rusted pocket watch, a silver locket with a faded photograph. These were the belongings of the missing 12. It was a staggering revelation. Had Father Thorne been a protector, or was he a predator? The town's history was suddenly rewritten. The holy man was now the primary suspect in a century-old mass disappearance. Vance, however, refused to jump to conclusions. He noticed that the items weren't hidden like trophies. They were organized and labeled with dates and locations. It looked more like an evidence locker than a killer's stash. He spent weeks cross-referencing the names in the journals with the local census. He discovered that several of the individuals Thorne had tracked had actually reappeared years later in neighboring counties, though they claimed to have no memory of how they got there or where they had been. This suggested a geographical displacement, a phenomenon that Thorne was trying to document. The tension in the investigation reached its peak when the team uncovered the resonance chamber. This was a perfectly spherical room located at the very bottom of the excavation. The walls were polished to a mirror-like finish, and in the center stood a pedestal designed to hold a large, heavy object. The object was gone, but the impression it left in the stone suggested something roughly the size of a human torso. Thorne's final journal entry, dated December 12, 1895, was a single, frantic sentence. "The frequency has stabilized, and the door is no longer locked." After that entry, Thorne was never seen again. His disappearance remained the greatest mystery of Oakhaven until Vance's team found a small metallic cylinder wedged into the floor of the resonance chamber. When opened, it contained a final letter addressed to whoever finds the truth. In the letter, Thorne explained that the disappearances were caused by a natural recurring rift, a localized distortion in spacetime that occurred every 50 years. He believed he had found a way to bridge the gap, to go where the others had gone and bring them back. He wasn't a murderer, he was a volunteer. The implications were profound. If Thorne was right, the cathedral was built not just as a place of worship, but as a lid on a jar. The massive weight of the stone and the specific geometry of the architecture were designed to dampen the resonance and prevent further disappearances. By opening the sanctum, Vance and his team had inadvertently disturbed a delicate balance. Shortly after the discovery of the letter, the structural tremors that had initiated the project suddenly intensified. Local authorities, fearing a collapse, ordered the sanctum to be filled with industrial-grade concrete. The Historical Society fought the order, but the safety of the town took precedence. Vance watched as the secrets he had spent months uncovering were buried once again, this time under thousands of tons of liquid stone. The journals and the personal items were moved to a secure archive, but the resonance chamber, the heart of the mystery, was lost forever. Today, St. Jude's Cathedral stands silent, its foundation reinforced but its history forever altered. The town of Oakhaven remains a quiet place, yet there is a lingering sense of unease among those who know what lies beneath. Was Thorne a visionary who stepped into the unknown to save his flock? Or was he a man driven mad by a mystery he couldn't control? The evidence points to a sophisticated understanding of the world that far exceeded the 19th century mind, yet it leaves us with more questions than answers. The case of the Oakhaven disappearances serves as a reminder that the past is never truly dead. It is merely waiting for someone to dig deep enough. We must approach these mysteries with a sense of responsibility, honoring the lives lost and the truths uncovered, even when they challenge our understanding of reality. The secret beneath the old church is a testament to the human drive to explore the shadows, even at the risk of being swallowed by them. Thank you for joining us on this investigation into the depths of St. Jude's Cathedral. This case reminds us that the buildings we walk past every day may hold stories far more complex than their facades suggest. If you found this deep dive into the Oakhaven mystery compelling, please show your support by hitting the like button and sharing this video with fellow mystery enthusiasts. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more meticulously researched investigations into the world's most enduring enigmas. What do you think happened to Father Thorne? Was he a hero or a victim of his own curiosity? Leave your theories in the comments below. Until next time, keep searching for the truth, no matter how deep it is buried. But as the camera fades to black and the credits begin to roll, a new flicker of evidence emerges from the digital static, a postscript that demands our attention. Because, as any seasoned investigator knows, a story is never truly over just because the concrete has set. Just 3 weeks after the sealing of the resonance chamber, a package arrived at the Oak Haven Historical Society. It bore no return address and was postmarked from a small sorting facility in upstate New York. Inside was not a journal or a map, but a series of wax cylinder recordings remarkably preserved, labeled simply, "The Echoes of October 1884. These recordings, which we have spent the last several months digitizing and cleaning through forensic audio software, provide a chilling, first-hand perspective on the final days of Father Thorn. They offer a window into a mind that was no longer merely observing a mystery, but was being consumed by it. The voice from the void. The first recording begins with a low, rhythmic thrumming, the same frequency Vance's team detected before the collapse. Then we hear Thorn's voice. It is thinner than one might expect, strained by exhaustion, yet possessed by a terrifying clarity. "They think the stone is a barrier," Thorn whispers, his voice competing with the metallic resonance of the chamber. "They think the earth is solid, but I have seen the marrow of the world. It is not bone, it is light. It is a vibration so intense that it makes the very air we breathe feel like lead." Thorn goes on to describe what he calls the harmonic bridge. According to his notes, the resonance chamber wasn't just a room. It was a tuning fork for the planet's electromagnetic field. He believed that at certain celestial alignments, the frequency within that chamber would reach a golden ratio that could thin the veil between physical dimensions. This brings us to a new, even more disturbing angle of the Oak Haven mystery: the physics of the unseen. We reached out to Dr. Eris Thorn, no relation, a theoretical physicist specializing in nonlinear acoustics. When we presented him with the data Vance recovered before the burial, his reaction was one of profound unease. What Thorn was describing in the 1880s shouldn't have been conceptually possible for another 80 years, Dr. Thorn explained. He talks about standing waves and phase cancellation as if they were common theological concepts. If the chamber was shaped exactly as the blueprints suggest, it wouldn't just echo sound. It would amplify geomagnetic fluctuations to a point where human perception would literally fracture. You wouldn't just hear the sound, you would experience a total breakdown of linear time. The missing 5. A new connection. With this scientific context, we revisited the files of the 5 individuals who vanished alongside the father. Previously, we viewed them as victims, unfortunate souls caught in the wake of a madman. But a closer look at their backgrounds reveals a pattern that suggests they weren't chosen at random. Take Father Thorn's sexton, Thomas Miller. Records from the Oak Haven Sanitarium, discovered in a mislabeled crate in the county basement, reveal that Miller suffered from a rare condition known as hyperacusis, an extreme sensitivity to sound. In one entry, a doctor notes that Miller claimed to hear the stars moving. Then there was Sarah Jenkins, a local schoolteacher. Her personal letters, recovered from a descendant in Oregon, speak of recurring visions of a city made of glass. She wasn't a follower of Thorn's congregation, she was a consultant. It appears Thorn was assembling a team, not of worshippers, but of sensitives. He believed that for the resonance chamber to function, it required a human element to act as a conductor. The disappearances may not have been kidnappings or accidents. They may have been a coordinated, voluntary exit. The shadow of the archive. As we delve deeper into the afterlife of this investigation, we must address the role of the Oak Haven City Council and the sudden, aggressive nature of the safety measures that led to the chamber being filled with concrete. Why the rush? The structural reports cited imminent collapse, yet independent. Surveyors we spoke to off the record suggested the limestone bedrock of Oak Haven is some of the most stable in the region. There was no geological reason for the chamber to be destroyed so completely. We followed the paper trail of the construction firm hired for the reinforcement. It leads back to a holding company called Ethelgard Foundations. Further digging reveals that Ethelgard has been involved in sealing over a dozen historical sites across the United States in the last 50 years, all of them sites associated with unexplained geological phenomena. Is there a broader effort to curate our history? To bury evidence that doesn't fit the standard narrative of human progress? The Oakhaven case suggests that the authorities are less interested in public safety and more interested in public ignorance. The second chamber? Perhaps the most shocking discovery in our follow-up investigation came from a ground-penetrating radar (GPR) scan conducted by a rogue hobbyist just days before the concrete was poured. The scan, which we have verified with secondary experts, shows that the resonance chamber Vance explored was not the lowest point of the structure. There is a secondary cavity, roughly 30 feet below the first, connected by a narrow vertical shaft. This lower chamber appears to be lined with a material that reflects GPR waves differently than the surrounding stone, possibly a metallic ore or a highly dense mineral. If Father Thorn and his followers weren't in the first chamber when the search parties arrived, is it possible they were in the second? And if so, are they still there, entombed not just by stone, but by the very concrete meant to save the town? The psychological toll. We also have to consider the impact on Elias Vance. Since the conclusion of the initial investigation, Vance has retreated from public life. His colleagues report that he became obsessed with the frequency he heard in the tunnels. In a final, brief correspondence with our team, Vance wrote, "The sound doesn't stop just because you fill the hole with cement. You don't understand. The concrete didn't bury the noise. It gave it a medium to travel through. The whole town is vibrating now. Can't you feel it?" This leads us to a chilling phenomenon currently being reported by the residents of Oakhaven. In the months following the sealing of the cathedral, there has been a 400% increase in reports of the hum, a low-frequency noise that keeps residents awake at night, causing headaches, nausea, and a pervasive sense of dread. Some call it wind in the rafters. Others call it Thorn's prayer. The global context. Ancient resonators. Oakhaven is not an isolated incident. When we broaden our scope, we find striking similarities between St. Jude's Cathedral and ancient sites like the Hypogum of Hal Saflieni in Malta, or the Oracle Chamber in the Chavin de Huantar in Peru. These ancient structures were designed with precise acoustic properties that can induce altered states of consciousness. The 440 Hz or 110 Hz frequencies found in these sites are known to shift brain activity from the left prefrontal cortex to the right, triggering hallucinations and spiritual experiences. Was Father Thorn an innovator, or was he a man who rediscovered an ancient, forgotten science? The blueprints for the resonance chamber show a sophisticated understanding of cymatics, the study of visible sound and vibration. By placing sand on a EO, vibrating plate, one can see geometric patterns form. Thorn's journals are filled with these patterns, which he called the language of the Creator. He believed that by creating a three-dimensional version of these patterns through architecture, he could create a gateway. The ethics of the unknown. As we approach the final chapter of this expanded investigation, we must ask ourselves, what is our responsibility to the truth? If we uncover a reality that challenges the very foundation of our daily lives, that suggests our physical world is merely a thin crust over a vast vibrating ocean of the unknown. Is it better to know, or better to live, in the safety of the silence? The town of Oakhaven chose the silence. They chose the concrete. They chose to look at the reinforced foundation of St. Jude's and see a building saved rather than a mystery buried. But the hum remains. The recordings of Thorn's voice remain. And the missing 5 remain. Somewhere. Final reflections on the Oakhaven enigma. The case of St. Jude's and Father Thorn is a modern parable of the human condition. We are builders of cathedrals and diggers of holes. We reach for the heavens while tunneling into the dark. Father Thorn's legacy isn't one of madness or holiness, but of curiosity pushed to its absolute limit. He was a man who refused to believe that the world ended at the surface of the skin or the edge of the visible spectrum. He wanted to hear the song of the universe, and in the end, he may have become a part of the melody. To the people of Oakhaven, the cathedral is a landmark. To the historians, it's a tragedy. To the scientists, it's an anomaly. But to us, it is a reminder that the most profound secrets are often hidden in plain sight, beneath the floors we walk on and within the walls we build to feel safe. As we close this file, we look toward the horizon. There are other towns like Oakhaven, other churches with deep basements, other journals waiting in dusty attics. The Gita past is not a closed book. It is a library where the pages are constantly being rewritten by those brave enough, or foolish enough, to keep reading. We will continue to monitor the situation in Oakhaven. We have installed long-term seismic and acoustic sensors on the outskirts of the town, hoping to capture a definitive recording of the hum. If Vance is right, and the concrete has only amplified the signal, we may soon have proof that the resonance chamber is still active, pulsing like a buried heart beneath the quiet streets. Until then, we leave you with the final words found on that mysterious wax cylinder. Thorne's voice is almost gone, replaced by a sound like rushing water or shattering glass. "Do not seek us in the earth," he says. "Seek us in the silence between the notes. We are not gone. We are simply tuned." The unanswered questions. Even after this exhaustive deep dive, several threads remain loose, fluttering in the wind of our inquiry. 1. The Ethelgard connection. Who funds the company that buries these anomalies? Our preliminary research into their board of directors shows ties to several high-level government defense contractors. Why would the military be interested in sealing old church basements? 2. The descendants. We have begun tracking the bloodlines of the missing 5. Interestingly, many of their grandchildren and great-grandchildren have excelled in fields of acoustics, music theory, and radio engineering. Is there a genetic predisposition to the hum? 3. The artifacts. Where are the personal items moved to the secure archive? When we petitioned the Oakhaven Historical Society for access, we were told the items had been lost in a plumbing leak 6 months ago. A convenient end for physical evidence. This investigation has changed us. It has made us look closer at the shadows in the corners of our own rooms. It has made us listen more intently to the ringing in our ears. We want to thank you for sticking with us through this expanded look into the Oakhaven mystery. Your comments, your theories, and your own local legends are what keep this channel alive. We've received hundreds of emails about similar hums in towns from England to Australia. The world is much noisier than we think. If you have information regarding Ethelgard foundations, or if you live in a town with a silent history that feels anything but, reach out to us. The truth is out there, vibrating just below the threshold of human hearing. A final word on Father Thorne. Was he a villain? The families of those who disappeared might say yes. He took their loved ones into a hole in the ground and never brought them back. Was he a saint? Those who believe in a higher plane of existence might see him as a pioneer, a man who found a way to transcend the suffering of the material world. Or was he simply a man who heard a sound and couldn't stop until he found the source? Perhaps the answer doesn't matter as much as the question itself. The Oakhaven enigma forces us to confront the limits of our knowledge. It humbles us. In an age where we think we have mapped every inch of the globe with satellites and sensors, Oakhaven reminds us that the greatest frontiers are not across the ocean or in deep space, but right under our feet. Keep your eyes open, keep your ears tuned, and never assume that because something is buried, it is forgotten. The Oakhaven legacy, moving forward. In the coming weeks, we will be releasing a companion documentary featuring the raw audio from the Thorne cylinders. We warn you, listener discretion is advised. Some who have heard the unedited tapes report symptoms similar to those experienced by the residents of Oakhaven: vertigo, vivid dreams, and a strange, lingering sense of nostalgia for a place they've never been. We are also launching a crowdfunding campaign to fund a private GPR survey of the land surrounding St. Jude's. If the second chamber exists, we intend to find it. We won't be, using concrete. We'll be using cameras. The story of the Oakhaven disappearances is a testament to the enduring power of mystery. It is a fire that never goes out, fueled by our own need to understand the why behind the what. As we sign off, we ask you one last time. What do you hear in the silence? Is it just the wind? Or is it an echo of Father Thorn, still singing his song in the dark? Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And as always, stay curious. The world is deeper than, Part 2. The Resonance of the Unseen. While the initial investigation into the Oakhaven disappearances concluded with more questions than answers, the digital aftermath triggered a global phenomenon. Within 48 hours of the documentary's release, the Oakhaven enigma shifted from a localized urban legend to a focal point for researchers, audiophiles, and theorists worldwide. This isn't just about a missing priest or a buried secret anymore. It is about the fundamental way we perceive reality through sound. The acoustic fingerprint of St. Jude's new data has emerged from independent acoustic engineers who analyzed the frequency patterns found in the Thorn cylinders. They discovered something the initial team missed: a mathematical anomaly. The pure sine wave recorded at the end of the previous segment wasn't just a technical glitch or a stylistic choice by the editors. It was a reconstruction of a frequency that appears to be naturally occurring within the limestone bedrock of the Oakhaven Valley. Experts in archaeoacoustics have long studied how ancient civilizations use sound to induce altered states of consciousness. From the Neolithic passage graves in Ireland to the hypogeums of Malta, certain structures were built to resonate at 110 Hz, a frequency that reportedly shifts brain activity toward the prefrontal cortex, the area associated with emotional processing and social behavior. In Oakhaven, the frequency is different. It's lower. It sits on the edge of infrasound, just below the threshold of human hearing, yet powerful enough to vibrate the fluid in the inner ear. This infrasonic ghost might explain the collective hallucinations and the nausea of the soul described in the 1950s police reports. If Father Thorn wasn't just hearing a sound but was actively trying to tune the architecture of St. Jude's to match it, he wasn't just a priest. He was an engineer of the subconscious. The second chamber. New evidence. Our crowdfunding efforts for the ground-penetrating radar (GPR) survey have yielded startling preliminary results. The scans of the area surrounding the sealed basement of St. Jude's don't just show a second chamber, they reveal a sprawling network of subterranean voids. These aren't natural caves. The geometry is too precise. The GPR images suggest a series of concentric circles radiating outward from the church's altar, buried nearly 40 feet underground. Local historians have pointed out that Oakhaven was built atop the ruins of an 18th-century silent colony, a group of reclusive settlers who took vows of absolute silence and were eventually driven out by accusations of witchcraft. Could Thorn have discovered their records? Was the song in the dark something that predated the church itself? We are now looking into the possibility that the church wasn't built to house a congregation, but to act as a lid on something far older. The psychological toll. The Oakhaven echo. As the raw audio from the cylinders began to circulate online, a strange pattern emerged among listeners. We've received hundreds of emails describing a phenomenon now dubbed the Oakhaven echo. Listeners report that after hearing the recordings, they begin to notice a specific rhythmic thrumming in their own homes. It's subtle, the sound of a refrigerator, the hum of power lines, the distant roar of traffic, but it begins to synchronize. People describe a feeling of waiting for a beat to drop that never comes. Psychologists suggest this is a form of frequency-induced pareidolia, where the brain tries to find patterns in random noise. However, some physicists argue that Thorn's recordings might have captured a rare harmonic resonance that, once heard, sensitizes the human auditory system to specific environmental vibrations. You don't just hear Oakhaven, you carry it with you. Looking toward the horizon. The next phase of our investigation will take us deeper into the archives of the Silent Colony. We have secured a meeting with a descendant of the town's founding family, who claims to possess a journal belonging to the mason who laid the foundation of St. Jude's. If the rumors are true, the mason didn't use mortar for the deepest stones. He used lead and salt. We are standing on the precipice of a discovery that could redefine our understanding of historical tragedies. Oak Haven isn't a ghost town because the people left. It's a ghost town because the ground itself is a recording device, playing back a loop of a moment we were never meant to witness. In our next segment, we will reveal the first high-resolution images of the GPR scans and speak with a survivor of the 1954 evacuation who claims she saw Father Thorn 1 week after the basement was filled with concrete. The silence is getting louder. Are you still listening? Segment 2. The Mason's Ledger and the Alchemy of Foundations. The transition from the auditory to the physical has been jarring for our team. While the Oak Haven echo continues to ripple through the comment sections and forums, our focus shifted to a small, climate-controlled room in the back of a private library in Vermont. This is where we met Elias Thorn, no direct relation to the father, but a distant branch of the same family tree that founded the silent colony. Elias sat across from us, his hands trembling as he produced a leather-bound volume that smelled of damp earth and oxidized metal. This was the journal of Thomas Vane, the master mason contracted in 1888 to build the foundation of St. Jude's. As we flipped through the brittle pages, the narrative of Oak Haven began to shift from one of religious fervor to something far more calculated and far more disturbing. Vane's entries don't read like those of a craftsman. They read like the notes of an occult engineer. In an entry dated October 14, 1889, Vane writes, "The father insists the geometry must be precise to the millimeter. He speaks of tuning the earth. We are no longer laying stone, we are building a resonator. Today we placed the primary cornerstones. Per his instructions, no lime was used. Instead, we poured a slurry of refined lead and blessed salt into the channels. The men complain of headaches. The air in the trench feels heavy, like the moments before a lightning strike. This confirms the rumors. The use of lead and salt in a foundation is historically unheard of in traditional architecture. Lead is a dense, grounding metal, often used in ancient rituals to bind or seal something away. Salt, conversely, is a purifier but also a conductor in certain chemical states. By using these materials, Thorn and Vane weren't just building a church. They were creating a Faraday cage for the soul, or perhaps a battery. As we analyzed the journal further, we found sketches of the basement layout. They didn't match the public records filed with the county. The GPR, ground-penetrating radar, scans we conducted last week finally explain why. The GPR revelation. Structures within structures. When we first processed the GPR data, we thought the equipment was malfunctioning. The images showed the expected rectangular outline of the church basement, now filled with solid concrete. But beneath that concrete, at a depth of approximately 12 feet, the radar revealed a series of concentric circles. These aren't natural geological formations. They are perfectly symmetrical rings made of a material much denser than the surrounding soil. Our lead surveyor, Dr. Eris Thorn, coincidentally sharing the name, pointed out that these rings resemble the internal structure of a turbine. If you look at the way the lead salt channels intersect with these rings, Dr. Thorn explained while pointing at the high-resolution monitor, it creates a circuit. When the groundwater moves through the porous limestone beneath Oak Haven, it creates a subtle kinetic energy. These rings seem designed to capture that energy and focus it directly into the center of the basement, the exact spot where Father Thorn's recording equipment was found. This changes everything. The silence of Oak Haven wasn't a lack of sound. It was a vacuum created by an intentional piece of spiritual machinery. The townspeople didn't just disappear. They were living inside a giant low-frequency oscillator for decades. The 1954 evacuation, the woman who saw too much to understand the human cost of this machinery, we tracked down Clara Miller, now 86, one of the last living residents who was present during the forced evacuation of 1954. For decades, the official story was a localized seismic instability that made the town unsafe. Clara tells a different story. "They told us to pack one suitcase and leave our doors unlocked," Clara told us, her eyes staring at a point just behind the camera. "The National Guard didn't look like soldiers. They looked like technicians. They wore heavy rubber suits and carried long poles with sensors on. The end. But the most chilling part of Clara's testimony involves the week after the town was declared empty. "I realized I'd left my mother's locket on the vanity," she whispered. "I snuck back through the woods at night. The town was dead quiet. Not even the crickets were singing. I made it to the church thinking I could hide there if a patrol came by. The basement had already been filled with concrete. You could still smell the wet lye. And there, standing right in the center of the nave, was Father Thorne." We reminded Clara that Father Thorne was supposed to have died years earlier, or at the very least been among the first evacuated. "I know what I saw," she insisted. "He wasn't moving. He was standing perfectly still, his head tilted back like he was drinking from the ceiling. And the sound. It wasn't a voice. It was a hum coming from his chest. It matched the hum of the ground. When he turned to look at me, he didn't have eyes. Just two gray pits that looked like the lead they poured into the walls. The physics of the residual loop. If we take Clara's account and Vane's journal as truth, we arrive at a terrifying hypothesis. Oakhaven was an experiment in sonic transcription. In the world of the paranormal, we often talk about stone tape theory, the idea that minerals and water can record high-emotion events and play them back as hauntings. But Oakhaven suggests something more proactive. Father Thorne wasn't waiting for a tragedy to record. He was using the very architecture of the town to induce a state of collective resonance. Think of a glass shattering when a singer hits the right note. Now, imagine a town where every house, every street, and every person is tuned to a specific frequency. If you hit that note, you don't just shatter the glass, you shatter the barrier between the present and the permanent. The Oakhaven echo that our listeners are experiencing, it's not just a psychological trick. By playing those wax cylinders on a digital medium, we have inadvertently redistributed that frequency. We have taken a localized phenomenon and broadcast it into the global infrastructure. The rhythmic thrumming people are hearing in their homes is the Oakhaven note, finding new resonators in the modern world. The Silent Colony's true purpose. As we dug deeper into the Silent Colony archives, we found a ledger of names. These weren't just the residents of Oakhaven. They were participants. Beside each name was a number, a frequency, measured in hertz. The colony wasn't a religious retreat, it was a choir, but they weren't singing with their voices. They were being tuned, over generations, to vibrate in harmony with the ground beneath them. The Mason, Vane, writes in his final entry, "The Father is pleased. The foundation is set. We no longer need the stones to hold the building up. The sound will hold it now. We are moving from the world of matter to the world of vibration. If you find this, do not speak. The air is listening." The final descent. What lies beneath the concrete? Next week we are returning to Oakhaven with a specialized team. We have received permission to perform a micro borehole drill into the center of St. Jude's basement. We aren't just looking for artifacts anymore, we are looking for the source of the hum. If Clara's account is true, and if the GPR scans are accurate, the concrete didn't bury the secret. It protected it. The concrete acted as a secondary insulator, sealing the battery Thorne built. We've also started receiving strange audio files from you, the listeners. Some of you have taken the Oakhaven echo and slowed it down by 800%. Underneath the static and the hum, there are voices. They aren't screaming. They are counting. And they're getting closer to zero. The expanding resonance. A warning. Before we conclude this segment, we must address a growing concern. Several members of our production crew have begun to exhibit symptoms similar to those described in the 1954 medical reports of Oakhaven residents. Chronic insomnia, a metallic taste in the mouth, and an obsessive need to arrange objects in concentric circles. Our sound engineer, Mike, was found yesterday in the studio, staring at a blank waveform for 6 hours. When asked what he was doing, he said he was polishing the silence. We are beginning to realize that Oakhaven isn't a place you visit. It's a frequency you catch. It's a viral acoustic parasite that uses the human ear as a gateway. The more we investigate, the more we amplify the signal. Is the silent colony truly gone? Or are they simply waiting for enough people to hear the note? The Mason's final map. Hidden in the back cover of Vane's ledger, we found a hand-drawn map. It doesn't show Oakhaven. It shows a series of points across North America, all located on similar limestone shelves, all near underground aquifers. There are 12 points in total. Oakhaven was only the first. If the silent colony was a successful experiment, then the architecture of resonance has already been exported. You might be living on a foundation of lead and salt right now. You might be part of a choir you never joined. Look at your walls. Do you see the cracks? They aren't from the house settling. They are the shape of the sound trying to get out, closing the loop. As we prepare for the borehole drilling, we leave you with one final piece of evidence. This is a 3-second clip from the very end of the thorn. Cylinders, a section we previously thought was just dead air. When visualized on a spectrograph, the silence forms a perfect image of a human face. It's not Father Thorn. It's a face that looks different to everyone who sees it. Some say it looks like a lost relative, others say it looks like themselves, only older and much, much quieter. We are standing on the precipice. The ground is vibrating, the lead is melting, and the salt is thirsty. In our next update, we will broadcast live from the basement of St. Jude's. We will break the concrete. We will find out what the father left behind. But be warned. Once you hear the source, the echo never stops. Are you still listening? Or are you finally starting to hum along? Technical appendix, the frequency analysis, for the curious and the brave. For those of you analyzing the audio files at home, pay close attention to the 19 Hz range. This is known as the infrasound frequency, the ghost frequency. It's just below the threshold of human hearing, but it's known to cause feelings of dread, blurred vision, and the sensation of being watched. In Oakhaven, the 19 Hz signal isn't a byproduct, it's the carrier wave. We've discovered that if you overlay the 19 Hz tone with the rhythmic thrumming of the Oakhaven echo, the two waves cancel each other out for a brief second. In that second of true, absolute silence, people have reported hearing a single word whispered directly into their ear. The word is always the same: foundation. We are currently cross-referencing this with the masonry marks found on the stones of the other 11 sites on Vane's map. The pattern is emerging. We aren't just looking at a series of ghost towns. We are looking at a global instrument, a planetary pipe organ waiting for the right wind to blow. And the wind is picking up. Final note for this segment. We've received a cease and desist order from a legal firm representing an entity called the Resonance Trust. They claim ownership of the acoustic intellectual property found in the Thorn recordings. We are ignoring it. The truth isn't something that can be owned. It's something that must be heard, even if it's the last thing we ever hear. Stay tuned. The drill hits the concrete at 09 Cairo GMT tomorrow. We will have the cameras rolling. We will have the microphones open. Whatever is down there has been waiting since 1954 to be heard. It's time we gave it a voice. The silence is over. The symphony is beginning.